The stars of the Vera corridor burned cold and sharp, their light fractured by drifting wreckage. Terran hulls torn open, scattering oxygen and fire into the endless dark. A lone transmission hissed across every channel, carried on static and defiance. "This is Admiral Kalen Vera of the Terran Union Fleet. You've made one mistake, Archlord." His voice was calm, deliberate, the kind that cut deeper than shouting ever could. Then came a pause, just long enough for his enemy to lean forward in silence. "You thought humanity would kneel, but we only ever smile before a fight." The channel went dead. Hours earlier, the Resolute hung in low orbit above Vera Prime, a scarred world of oceans and steel cities. From the bridge, Admiral Kalen watched the streams of civilian transports streaking towards safe zones, engines burning hard to escape the growing shadow of war. He leaned on the railing, eyes narrowing at the endless flicker of ships leaving home. Each one was proof the Empire had already struck. Commander Lyra approached, datapad in hand. Her voice was clipped, efficient. "Border colony of Daros, 4 is gone. 20,000 civilians unaccounted for. Patrol Squadron Theta, wiped out. Survivors say Zalorian raiders hit fast. No warnings." Kalen exhaled slowly. He wasn't surprised. The Empire had been pressing the border for months, probing with scouts, watching how the Terrans reacted. Now, they had chosen open bloodshed. Have they issued a declaration? Kalen asked, not taking his eyes from the transports below. Lyra shook her head. "The Zalorians don't declare. They purge." The bridge fell quiet at that. Officers worked at their stations, faces pale in the blue glow of consoles. The silence was heavy, but Kalen's voice cut through it. "Steady as ever. Then will be their first mistake." Far across the stars, Archlord Varkor reclined upon his throne of black metal, the air around him thick with the scent of burning incense. The chamber was carved from obsidian, walls inlaid with the history of Zalorian conquest. Empires shattered, species bound in chains. Before him knelt his generals. They reported with measured precision. Terran colonies burned, ships scattered, defenses cracked. And how do they answer? Tvar asked, his voice a deep growl. A general raised his head. "With defiance, Archlord. Their admiral sends messages across the void." He laughs in defeat. A ripple of amusement passed through the chamber. Tvar's smile revealed rows of sharp teeth. "Of course they do. Primitive races often cling to bravado before annihilation. Let them laugh. They will weep soon enough." Back aboard the Resolute, Kalen studied a holographic projection of the galaxy. Zalorian borders pulse in crimson, encroaching steadily toward Terran space. Humanity was surrounded by older powers, empires that measured time in millennia, not centuries. Terrans had survived because no one thought them worth crushing. Now they had drawn attention. Lyra stepped closer. "They'll outnumber us 10-1, sir. Maybe more, if they bring the full expansionary fleet." She left the rest unsaid. Kalen turned to her, and there was a grin, the one that unsettled enemies and reassured his crew in equal measure. "Then it's a fair fight." Lyra frowned. "You can't keep using humor as armor. We're not invincible." "No," Kalen agreed, "but we're unpredictable. That's better." The Fleet Council convened hours later. Captains appeared as shimmering figures above the holodeble, their uniforms neat despite sleepless nights. Arguments erupted immediately, some demanding retreat to inner worlds, others calling for desperate strikes at Zalorian supply lines. Kalen listened without interruption. When silence finally fell, he spoke. "We don't have the luxury of retreat. They won't stop at the border. Every world behind us is next. We hold here or we lose everything." A captain's voice cracked through the projection. "We can't win a straight fight. Their ships are bigger, their shields stronger. Which is why," Kalen cut in, "we won't fight straight." The room stilled. The Vera corridor is narrow, flanked by asteroid fields. Their formations will break apart in there. We use the terrain, turn their numbers against them. We fight on our terms. There was hesitation, then nods, one by one. Even through fear, the captains trusted him. Humanity's survival had always come down to leaders who dared impossible odds. Night on the bridge was quiet save for the hum of engines. Kalen lingered by the observation deck, stars sharp against the void. Lyra approached again, softer this time. "Do you ever wonder why they hate us so much?" she asked. Kalen tilted his head. "Because we remind them of themselves, before they grew arrogant, before they forgot what it meant to fight with nothing but desperation." Lyra studied him. "And if we lose?" He finally looked at her, eyes steady. "Then we lose smiling. And they'll never forget that." Across the border, Tor stood before his assembled fleet, 1,000 warships stretching across the void, hulls gleaming like black knives. His voice boomed over the comms. "Terrans are insects, nothing more. Crush them quickly, make them kneel, and let the galaxy remember the price of defiance." The fleet surged forward, a tide of metal and fury. Back on the Resolute, alarms blared. Terran sensors picked up the advancing force. Officers moved with trained urgency, voices sharp. "Admiral, Zalorian fleet entering the corridor." Kalen straightened, his grin flashing in the dim light. "Then let's give them the welcome they deserve." That was when he sent the transmission, the words that would echo across the stars, words that carried not just defiance, but a challenge to an empire that believed humans weak. "This is Admiral Kalen Vera of the Terran Union Fleet. You've made one mistake. Archlord, you thought humanity would kneel, but we only ever smile before a fight." And as silence followed, Kalen stood tall on the bridge of the Resolute, the hum of the ship around him like a heartbeat. The smile never left. The hangar of the Resolute was alive with noise, welding torches sparking against scorched armor, hydraulic lifts groaning as fighters were lowered into place, shouted commands bouncing off steel walls. The air smelled of fuel, metal, and determination. Admiral Kalen walked the length of the bay, boots striking against the deck. Everywhere he looked, men and women worked with a strange energy, not solemn, not broken, but charged with an edge only humans carried. They laughed while patching hulls, bet cigarettes on which ship would survive the longest, and mocked the empire that thought fear alone could shatter them. A mechanic leaned from the open belly of a fighter, face streaked with grease. "Sir, if the Zalorians don't kill us, this machine will. It's held together with tape and prayers." Kalen allowed the corner of his mouth to lift, then make the prayers louder. "The tape's fine." The bay erupted with chuckles. It wasn't bravado for its own sake. It was release, a pressure valve against the crushing knowledge that thousands of warships were bearing down on them. Commander Lyra joined him as he reached the far end. Her arms were folded, expression cool but eyes sharp. They masked fear with jokes. Typical humans. "They've earned the right," Kalen said. "We don't match the Empire ship for ship. We have to believe in something else." Lyra raised a brow. "And what's that?" "Miracles." "No," he replied. "Ourselves." Across the void, on the flagship Cartha's Dominion, Archlord Var studied the Terran Fleet reports. His generals hovered around the holographic projection of the Vera corridor. "Terrans are gathering here," one explained. "They prepare to resist, though their numbers are pitiful." Tvar snorted. "Fools! They've chosen their graveyard. Let them smile in the dark. Their bones will teach the galaxy silence." He dismissed the report with a wave, already certain of victory. For him, Terrans were not adversaries but vermin, troublesome, yes, but never dangerous. On the Resolute, the Fleet Council reconvened. Captains appeared once more in shimmering blue holograms, eyes weary, but voices firm. Kalen wasted no time. "Our intelligence confirms the Empire advances in force. We can't outrun them, and we can't outgun them. That leaves one option. We outthink them." The holodeable flickered to show the Vera corridor, a stretch of navigable space flanked by dense asteroid belts, treacherous to any large formation. "We lure them inside," Kalen continued. "Their dreadnoughts will lose maneuverability. Our frigates and cruisers strike from cover, forcing them into chaos. The corridor breaks their advantage." One captain frowned. "It could also break us. A misstep in those asteroids and we're debris." "Then don't misstep," Kalen answered evenly. Murmurs spread. Doubt lingered. But beneath it was something stronger, the memory that humanity had always survived the impossible. Slowly, captains nodded, one after another. After the meeting, Lyra cornered Kalen in the strategy chamber. Her voice was quiet, almost cautious. "You're gambling everything on terrain and instinct. If they adapt faster than we do—" "They won't," Kalen interrupted. His tone wasn't arrogance, but certainty. Lyra studied him for a long moment. "How can you be so sure?" He leaned closer, voice low. "Because they don't know how to laugh at the abyss. That's the difference. When chaos comes, they'll panic. We'll grin and push harder." She shook her head, but didn't argue further. She had served under him long enough to know conviction, like his, wasn't empty. Preparations consumed the next 2 days. Crews tested stealth arrays to confuse enemy sensors. Pilots drilled hit-and-run patterns through simulated asteroid fields. Gunners fine-tuned weapons to fire in rapid bursts, maximizing chaos. Every adjustment was designed not for raw strength, but for unpredictability. In the mess hall, soldiers swapped stories, laughter rising above clattering trays. One young Marine raised a toast with recycled coffee. "To the Zalorians, may they choke on our stubbornness." The hall roared with approval. Kalen walked among them later, unseen for a moment, listening. He didn't interrupt. This, more than any briefing or order, was why humanity survived. They faced annihilation not with despair, but with gallows humor and grit. Meanwhile, Twar convened his war council again. Generals assured him of inevitable victory, showing projections of Terran losses. One, more cautious, raised a concern. "Archlord, their admiral, is unconventional. Reports describe tactics outside logic. Perhaps." "Perhaps what?" Tvar's voice was thunder. "That a child race can outwit us? Do not insult the Empire." The general bowed low. "Of course, Archlord." Tvar turned his gaze to the stars. "By this time next cycle, the Terrans will be ash. Remember that." The Resolute's bridge was calm as the fleet approached the corridor. Stars narrowed into streaks before dissolving into the jagged shadows of asteroids. The passage stretched like a throat of stone, swallowing them whole. "Fleet status?" Kalen asked. "All ships in formation," Lyra reported. "No stragglers." Kalen studied the holographic display. "Good. Let the Empire follow. In here, their pride becomes our weapon." Later, as the fleet settled into hidden positions among the rocks, Kalen allowed himself a moment on the observation deck. The asteroid field stretched in every direction, glimmering with distant ice. It was a place of danger and concealment both. Lyra joined him, her expression softer than before. "They'll come soon." Kalen's eyes stayed on the void. "Yes, and when they do, we'll show them why humanity smiles." Far away, the Empire's fleet surged forward, a tide of dark steel. Tens of thousands of engines roared against the silence of space. At their head, Twar leaned forward on his throne, hunger in his eyes. "Terrans think to trap us," he muttered. "They forget who built this galaxy. Let them cling to hope. It makes the breaking sweeter." Back aboard the Resolute, alarms blared. Sensor officers called out, "Admiral, enemy fleet entering the corridor. Estimate, 300 warships, including dreadnoughts." Kalen's grin flashed in the dim light. "Then let's see if arrogance makes good target practice." The bridge crew tensed, but in that grin was something steady, unshakable. The Terran fleet waited in the shadows, every weapon primed, every crewman alert. Kalen placed his hands behind his back, voice calm. "Signal the fleet. No fear. No hesitation. Today we smile." The asteroids loomed like frozen giants, their shadows stretching across the narrow lane of the Vera corridor. The Resolute drifted silently among them, engines running low, weapons hot but restrained. Every crewman was quiet now, the laughter of preparation replaced by a taut, steady readiness. Admiral Kalen stood at the heart of the bridge, gaze locked on the holographic display. Red icons multiplied across the grid. The Zalorian fleet pressing forward, massive and deliberate, filling the passage with overwhelming bulk. 3 dreadnoughts in lead formation, Lyra reported. Her voice was steady, but her knuckles whitened around the datapad. 2 carrier groups behind, screening ships along both flanks. Kalen's eyes narrowed. Arrogant but predictable. They're confident the corridor is too narrow for us to maneuver. Arrogant, Lyra repeated. Or correct. Kalen's grin flickered. We'll answer that shortly. On the flagship Cartha's Dominion, Archlord Varkor surveyed his fleet from a throne-like command chair. The Zalorian vessels stretched in disciplined lines, bristling with weapons and shimmering shields. To him, it was beauty, order, inevitability, destiny. Terrans hide in the rocks like vermin, a general said. Our scans detect nothing but debris. Tvar leaned forward, claws tapping the armrest. They are here. They want us to chase them. Good. We'll chase them into extinction. He signaled. The dreadnoughts advanced, their shields shimmering against the asteroid dust. Back on the Resolute, Kalen raised a hand. Ready Ghost Protocol. At once, technicians engaged sensor jammers. Waves of static rippled outward, masking Terran signatures with false echoes. To Zalorian scanners, the asteroid became a swarm of shifting phantoms. Sir, jammers online. The comms officer confirmed. They won't know what's real until we hit them. Exactly. Kalen's smile sharpened. Patience, people. Let them believe they lead. The minutes stretched then. The Zalorian fleet crept deeper into the corridor, filling the narrow lane with their bulk. Engines hummed. Shields glowed faintly blue. Range closing, Lyra whispered. Another 50,000 clicks. Hold, Kalen murmured. The first strike came not from the Resolute, but from the rocks themselves. A cluster of hidden Terran frigates powered up, emerging from asteroid cover like wolves from shadows. Their cannons roared, unleashing bursts of kinetic fire into the lead dreadnought's flanks. Explosions rippled across its armored hull. On the Zalorian flagship, alarm shrieked. Contact, a general barked. Terrans at close range. Tvar's eyes blazed. Fools. Crush them. But the Terran frigates didn't linger. They fired, darted behind cover, and vanished into the asteroid field. The dreadnought's return barrage struck only stone. Kalen seized the moment. All ships phase 2. Strike and vanish. Keep them guessing. The Resolute surged forward, weapons blazing. Across the field, Terran destroyers appeared, hammered a cruiser, then cut engines and drifted into silence, lost in phantom echoes. Each blow landed where Zalorians least expected, and each counterstrike wasted itself on empty space. The bridge shook as enemy fire grazed Resolute's shields. Sparks rained across the console. Minor damage port side, an officer reported. Kalen didn't flinch. Good. Remind them we're here. In the chaos, Zalorian discipline strained. Their dreadnoughts lumbered forward, struggling to track nimble Terran frigates weaving between asteroids. Fighters launched, only to vanish into sensor ghosts, colliding with debris or each other in the storm of interference. This is dishonor, one general spat. They refuse open combat. Tvar bared his teeth. They fear open combat. Keep pressing. Force them to reveal themselves. But even as he spoke, another Terran ambush tore through a Zalorian carrier's side. Fire spread across its decks, fighters spilling uselessly into the void. On the Resolute, tension mounted. The Terrans had bloodied the enemy, but the cost was climbing. Reports streamed in. A corvette lost collision, a destroyer crippled by lucky fire. The odds still weighed heavily. Lyra glanced at Kalen. We're bleeding them, but at this rate. Kalen cut her off. Then we cut deeper. He keyed the comms. Fleet, feign retreat. Pull them into the choke point. Make them believe we're running. Gasps met the order, but no one argued. Terran ships turned, drifting deeper into the corridor as if withdrawing. The Zalorians took the bait. Tvar surged to his feet, laughter booming. At last! They flee. Press harder, crush them now. His fleet accelerated, massive dreadnoughts pushing forward in reckless pursuit. Then the trap closed. Hidden charges detonated along the asteroids, blasting fragments into the path of pursuing ships. Zalorian formations broke apart, shields flaring under the sudden storm. Terran ships pivoted back, firing from cross angles. The corridor erupted in fire. The Resolute dove through the chaos, weapons hammering a crippled cruiser until it split apart in a silent bloom of flame. Kalen stood firm as the deck jolted beneath enemy return fire. "Status of the line?" he demanded. "Enemy cohesion fractured." Lyra answered. "They're scattered, struggling to regroup. Then we keep them scattered." Kalen leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "Break the hunters into prey." For hours, the battle raged. The corridor became a graveyard. Wrecks of Zalorian warships colliding with asteroids, fires burning silently in the void. Terran losses mounted too, but the Empire bled more heavily than it ever imagined. At last, the Zalorian fleet began pull back, dreadnoughts limping, carriers aflame. On the flagship, Tvar seethed, claws tearing grooves into his armrest. Terrans, smiling cowards. When silence finally returned to corridor, the Resolute drifted among wreckage. Fires burned across its hull. Shields flickered weakly, but it still stood. Kalen exhaled slowly, gaze sweeping the ruined passage. "One battle down," he murmured. 800 to go." Lyra turned to him, eyes heavy but steady. "You know they'll come back stronger." Kalen's grin returned, faint but unshaken. "Good. Next time, we'll smile wider." The Resolute floated in silence, its hull scorched, plating stripped where enemy fire had chewed too deep. Entire decks were sealed, life support barely keeping pace. Across the fleet, the damage told the same story. Victory purchased at a punishing price. Admiral Kalen walked the recovery bays, hands clasped behind his back. Medics worked in dim light, moving between stretchers where crewmen lay bandaged, exhausted, but still alive. Some smiled as he passed, bruised faces lighting with a spark of pride. They knew they had done the impossible, standing against a fleet that should have crushed them outright. But Kalen also knew what they didn't. This was only the beginning. He stopped at the viewport, staring into the stars beyond the corridor. The galaxy outside looked serene, but somewhere out there, Archlord Tvar was gathering his fury. On the Empire's side, fury was an understatement. The Kartha's dominion docked at a forward fortress, surrounded by shipyards working without pause. Dozens of new warships poured from scaffolds, while damaged vessels were patched with haste. In his command hall, Tvar's voice roared across the chamber. "One corridor skirmish, and the vermin humiliate us. One battle, and the galaxy whispers that Terrans bleed our honor. This insult ends now." His generals bowed low, wary of his wrath. "We will assemble a war fleet no outworld can resist. Terrans will not survive a second encounter." Tvar bared his fangs. "Not survive? No, they will vanish. Their smiles will be the last relic of their arrogance." Back aboard the Resolute, Kalen convened his officers in the strategy chamber. The holographic display showed projections, red markers representing the Empire's growing fleets, spilling across the sector like wildfire. "They'll throw everything they have at us," Lyra said, voice clipped. "Even if we regroup at Eridan Prime, we'll be swept aside. Numbers are against us." Kalen tapped the display, shifting the map. The Cirrus Nebula bloomed in blue, a vast storm cloud of plasma and ionized gas, unstable and unpredictable. "They expect us to meet them head-on," he said. "We won't. We'll drag them here." The room went quiet. Commander Juno frowned. "That's suicide. Plasma storms burn out shields. Sensors don't function. Half our fleet won't even navigate the entry." Kalen didn't flinch. "Exactly. And neither will they. But unlike them, we adapt. We improvise. In chaos, we endure." Lyra leaned forward, studying him carefully. "You want to fight in a storm where no system works, where no strategy holds. That's not a plan, it's a gamble." Kalen's lips curled. "Every victory humanity has ever earned was a gamble. We risk everything because everything is already at stake." The next days blurred into frantic preparation. Engineers stripped excess systems, reinforcing hulls against radiation surges. Pilots drilled navigation by instinct alone, running simulations where instruments lied or blacked out. Gun crews trained with manual targeting, learning to fire by timing and intuition rather than sensors. Morale wavered at times. Whispers of suicide missions spread through the decks. But when Kalen walked the hangars, Crewman snapped straighter, drawing courage from his unshaken composure. In one corner, a mechanic muttered as he patched the fighter wing. "Storm will cook us alive." His partner smirked. "Yeah, but imagine the Zolorians when they fry first." The laughter rippled, thin but real. Even in fear, Terrans joked. Lyra found Kalen late one night, still staring at the nebula's map. She hesitated, then asked quietly, "Do you believe this will work? Or do you just want them to see we'll never kneel?" Kalen didn't look away from the swirling storm on the display. "Both. Survival means little if we lose what makes us human. They expect us to break. Instead, we'll grin into the fire." For a moment, she simply watched him. Then she gave a small nod. "Then I'll stand in the fire with you." News arrived. The Zolorian war fleet was on the move. Hundreds of ships, more than the corridor battle by an order of magnitude, marching toward Terran space. The Terran Fleet assembled what little strength remained: battered destroyers, scarred cruisers, and a limping Resolute at their center. Outnumbered nearly 5-1, they charted a course not toward safety, but into the heart of the Cirrus Nebula. As the swirling gas clouds loomed on the view screen, a nervous hush fell across the bridge. The storms ahead crackled with distant arcs of plasma, colors shifting in violent hues. It looked less like a battlefield than a living beast waiting to devour them. "Fleet entering the nebula in formation," Lyra reported, her tone disciplined despite the knot in her throat. Kalen straightened, voice calm and commanding. "Remember this. They believe the storm is death. But to us, it's freedom. In this chaos, they'll falter. And in this chaos, we'll make history." The bridge crew looked to him, and something shifted in the air. Fear gave way to a quiet, stubborn pride. Kalen gave the order. All ships, burn for storm. The Resolute plunged forward, swallowed by lightning and flame. On the edge of the nebula, Tavares' war fleet closed in. From his throne, he gazed into the swirling storm where Terrans had disappeared. They hide in fire now, thinking storms will save them. Instead, they've dug their own graves. He raised a clawed hand. "Advance! Let the galaxy see their smiles burn to ash." The Zolorian dreadnoughts surged into the storm, shields flaring against the first lashes of plasma. Behind them, carriers and cruisers followed, filling the void with arrogance and steel. None realized yet that they had stepped into humanity's chosen ground. Back on the Resolute, alarms blared as arcs of energy lashed across the hull. Sparks burst from consoles, crew shielding their eyes from flash. Yet Kalen's voice cut steady through the chaos. "Hold the line. Keep formation tight. This is our battlefield now." Outside, the nebula writhed with violence, lightning illuminating Terran ships as shadows darting through flame. The final clash loomed, inevitable and absolute, and Kalen smiled. The Cirrus Nebula swallowed fleets whole. Plasma storms lashed across the void, waves of blue and violet lightning tearing through clouds of fire. Sensors screamed nonsense, comms warped into static, and shields bled energy faster than crews could replenish. Amid the chaos, the Terran fleet pressed forward. Small, battered ships moved like shadows in the storm, weaving through turbulence the Empire's dreadnoughts could barely endure. On the Resolute's bridge, sparks rained as consoles flared under interference. Officers shouted reports, voices strained over alarms. Shields at 30%. Navigation unreliable, starboard drift correcting. Kalen stood at the center, unshaken. "Stay steady. The storm fights us, but it fights them harder." Lyra glanced at him, tension cut with awe. "They can't track us through this." "Exactly," Kalen said, eyes fixed on the shifting void. "Which means we hunt." On the flagship Cartha's Dominion. The storm was not an ally but a torment. Scanners useless. A general snapped, claws scraping the console. Enemy positions unreadable. Bolts of plasma raked the dreadnought's hull. Shields flaring in protest. Fighters launched blindly into storm, many vanishing in bursts of fire as they struck hidden arcs. Archlord Tvar snarled, rising from his throne. "They think storms will save them? No storm shields prey from a predator. Push forward. Drive blind if you must." Their courage will crumble. But even as he roared, a Terran frigate darted from the storm, guns blazing. Its torpedoes slammed into a cruiser's flank, fire spilling across decks before the frigate disappeared back into lightning. Tvar's snarl twisted into disbelief. They'd play in a storm? Back on the Resolute, the crew moved with growing momentum. The nebula, once a terror, became cover. Weapons fired in quick, brutal strikes. Terran destroyers crippled carriers by flaring plasma cloud behind them, igniting reactors in chain reactions. Kalen barked orders with sharp precision. Strike and vanish. Target engines, leave them drifting blind. Lyra leaned toward him. Reports. Enemy cohesion failing. Their formations collapsing. Kalen's grin sharpened. Good. Then it's time for the smile. She frowned. The what? Kalen's voice dropped into a fierce, quiet tone. Broadcast fleet-wide. Open all channels. Let them hear us. Lyra hesitated, then relayed the command. Across the Terran Fleet, laughter erupted over comms. Pilots, gunners, captains, all laughing as they fought. The sound bled into Zalorian receivers, unfiltered, echoing across their systems. On the Kartha's Dominion, Tvar froze as a strange chorus reached him. What is that noise? A trembling officer answered. They are laughing, my lord. The Archlord's jaws clenched. While dying, the laughter grew louder, mixing with battle cries, a defiant chorus in the storm. The battle raged hotter. Plasma arcs ripped through hulls, carving dreadnoughts apart. Terran ships darted like predators, striking crippled targets with surgical precision. For every Terran vessel lost, 3 Zalorians fell. Kalen's eyes never left the tactical map, though static scrambled it beyond use. He read the storm itself, instinct guiding decisions machines could not. Port batteries, fire blind into Sector 4, he ordered. The guns roared. Moments later, a Zalorian cruiser staggered into view, its engines gutted by the wild volley. Lyra shook her head, a thin smile breaking through. You're guessing. Kalen answered without looking at her. I'm remembering. Chaos is where we grew up, where we've always lived. They can't win here, because they've never known it. At last, the Resolute closed with the enemy flagship. The Kartha's Dominion loomed through storm fire, massive and wounded but still monstrous, weapons lashing out in fury. Targeting their bridge, Lyra reported, shields unstable. Kalen's voice was calm. Then we finish this. The Resolute surged forward, guns blazing. Torpedoes streaked through the storm, slamming into the flagship's flanks. Explosions rippled across its hull, tearing away decks. On the enemy bridge, Tvar roared as alarms shrieked. His generals shouted in panic. Fires licking the walls. Impossible. They should be broken. But his eyes fixed on the Terran flagship, and for the first time, fear touched him. Through the storm, he glimpsed Kalen's vessel advancing, and he knew the truth. They smile, he whispered hoarsely, because they do not fear death. The final strike came swift. The Resolute dove under the dreadnought's barrage, cutting engines to drift within plasma currents. At point-blank range, Kalen gave the order. All batteries fire. The broadside hammered into the Kartha's Dominion, rupturing its core. A blossom of fire erupted, consuming the flagship in blinding light. The explosion lit the nebula, its shock waves scattering debris into the storm. The Zalorian fleet faltered, cohesion shattered, morale gone. One by one, their ships disengaged, retreating into the void. Silence fell. The Resolute drifted among wreckage, battered but alive. Fires dimmed, alarms quieted. Across the fleet, surviving ships regrouped, scarred yet unbroken. Lyra sagged into her chair, voice hushed. They're retreating. It's over. Kalen exhaled, steadying himself. His gaze lingered on the stars beyond the nebula, where the Empire had fled. Not over. Not yet. They'll return. Lyra looked at him, weary but resolute. And when they do, Kalen's smile flickered, faint but fierce. Then they'll remember this storm. And they'll remember we smiled.